This story is based on a true event. It took place in 2006 and is about a man named Idris living in Amman, Jordan. He was a businessman blessed with great wealth and success. He had a wife but no children. They both longed to have at least one child, preferably a boy. Idris had siblings, all happily married and blessed with boys and girls. He wished to have children to inherit his wealth as he and his wife were over 40. They had both seen doctors to help them conceive, but to no avail. Idris was impotent and could never have children. His wife, however, was patient and never gave up hope. She always said it was God's will, and if he wanted them to have a child, he would certainly bless them with one. One day, Idris needed some plumbing work done at his house. He called a maintenance company, and the next day an Egyptian pipe fitter showed up. "Hello, good morning," he said. "I came to fix the sink. My name is Mursal." "Oh, hello," smiled Idris. "Come on in. I'll show you where we need the work done." Idris led the plumber to the kitchen. Mursal removed his tools from his carry bag and knelt to examine the pipes. Idris stood by while the plumber worked. He started chatting with him, asking him about his life and his family. Mursal told him he lived in Amman, and his family was there with him. Then, out of curiosity, Idris asked him how many children he had. "I have 7, 3 girls and 4 boys," Mursal replied with a grin. "I need to work hard to feed them and send them to school." "You don't know how blessed you are," Idris commented. "Thanks be to God," Mursal said, his head under the sink. Idris was quiet for a while. He was thinking. Mursal finished his work, got up to check the taps, and dried himself with a towel. "I am done," he said, and started putting his tools back into the bag. He looked at Idris, who was staring at him with keen interest. Eyes wide open, he pointed to his pocket. "What do you think about giving me one of your children? I'll pay you a lot of money for one of your little boys." Mursal was shocked. He couldn't say a single word. Idris gave him time to think. "No, no, never," he finally blurted out. "Impossible!" He could not grapple with the idea of giving up one of his children in exchange for money. But then here he was, struggling day and night, trying to make ends meet in order to provide for his family. When was it all going to end? Years from now, he would still be struggling. Idris's face fell into a deep sadness. "I don't have a single child," he murmured. "I don't think I can ever have a child." Mursal left the house, deep in thought. He felt a bit excited, but also, deep down, a sense of nervousness. That evening he waited for the children to go to bed and then quietly went to the kitchen where his wife, Sausan, was busy cleaning up after dinner. "Dear," he began, "look, today I got an amazing offer. Lots of money." "Really?" "Yes." He scratched his head, wondering how to tell her what they had to do to get that money. Sausan wiped her hands, grinned, and took a tray of tea and biscuits to the table in the living room. Mursal sat down beside her on the sofa and told her what had happened that day. When he reached the part where Idris offered a lot of money in exchange for one of their boys, she sprang to her feet and almost screamed, "No way! No, no, never!" Mursal tried to calm her down. "It's okay, no, of course not. We can never sell our children for money," he said, sipping some tea. His wife still looked furious. There was no way this was going to work. The next day, he got up early as he could not sleep. He had to find a way to get the money, but how? He had to think hard. He roamed the streets, deep in thought. He could not focus on his work as a plumber, so he took a few days off to work out a plan. A small park in the neighborhood attracted his attention. He sat on a bench there and looked around. He spotted an ice cream van nearby, and some children were gathered there, buying iced lollipops and cool drinks. All of a sudden, an idea struck him. Why not get an ice cream van himself? When the children had all gone, he approached the van and casually asked the vendor what he would have to do to sell ice cream in another part of the town. He learned that he had to go to the ice factory where they will help him get a van or bike to sell their products. They would pay him a share of the profits. Before long, Mursal was on the road with an ice cream bike at the other end of town. The bike had a mini freezer to hold the products he had to sell. This area was a posh area where upper-middle-class people lived. He honked, and soon enough children came to buy from him. Among the children was a girl of about 7 years of age who was carrying a baby boy, aged about 1. They wanted ice cream. Mersel waited for all the children to go, and then asked the girl to bring him some water as he was thirsty. He told her to let the little boy choose what iced lollipop from the freezer he wanted while she fetched a glass of water for him. The girl, whose name was Duja, was happy to oblige and ran to her house, which was close by. She returned a few minutes later only to find the ice cream bike was gone. So was the little boy. She looked everywhere, but there was no sign of either of them. Panicking, she ran back home and told her mother. The boy, Hytham, was her uncle's son, her first cousin. There was a sudden uproar in the house. The men in the house all ran out to search for the missing boy. Duja was in tears. She kept calling the boy's name. Her mother tried to comfort her, saying Hytham would be found soon. The men returned after some hours looking worried. They must report the boy's disappearance to the police. Meanwhile, Mersel sped with all haste to the house of Idris. On the way, he got rid of all the iced lollipops and juices and settled the baby boy properly in the freezer. He left the lid slightly open and admonished the boy to stay quiet. He reached the house by sunset and rang the bell. Idris appeared at the main gate and looked surprised to see Mersel. "Here, quick," Mersel panted. "Let me in. I got what you wanted." Idris had almost forgotten about the matter till Mersel opened the lid of the freezer. There crouched a little boy, looking really frightened and about to cry. "What? Who?" Idris could not believe his eyes. "Please, hurry up. Get me the money. I found this boy for you, abducted him. Oh, no!" Idris felt immense joy at seeing the boy and grinned happily. He ran in to get the cash for Mersel. When he came out, he handed the money to him. They took the little boy out of the freezer and comforted him. Mersel told Idris to keep the ice cream bike hidden inside his house. "Me and my family are leaving tonight to return to Egypt. Please keep this a secret." "Of course, sure." Idris felt he was dreaming. "Depart safely. Best thing to do." With that, he double-locked the gate and ran inside, holding the boy in his arms. His wife was by the door. "Take him. Give him something to eat. Calm him down. He is going to be our baby, our child." "But how?" His wife looked surprised, but her heart raced with joy. "Just be thankful and happy," he smiled. "And ask no questions, please." She hugged the little boy and took him inside. Back to Duja and the families and relatives of the boy who had been abducted. There was a lot of commotion in their houses. The police had arrived and search parties scoured the neighborhood. Every house, park, and street was searched. Duja herself was in deep sorrow. She felt responsible for the disappearance of her little cousin. Why did she leave him alone with the ice cream vendor? What was she even thinking? This was a baby entrusted to her for a few minutes, and she had failed in her responsibility. There was nothing she could do but cry her heart out. Months passed, and still there was no news about the boy. Information about him was all over the media, but no one came forward to report anything. Duja's life was one of sadness and regret. She could never forget what had happened on that fateful day. Most of her time was spent standing by the window, hoping to catch sight of the ice vendor on his bike. Years went by. Duja had finished school and college. A proposal came for her from her uncle's son, Samir. He had graduated as a dentist and found a good job in Dubai. He was planning to come back to Amman to get engaged and married to Duja. All was going well, and the engagement and marriage took place. Samir returned to Dubai to make preparations to bring his bride there. Throughout this time, Duja was a happy bride on the outside, but inside she was in deep pain, thinking about her missing cousin. She would dream of him and call his name all the time, so much so that her parents felt real pity for her. They hoped that being married to Samir and living away from home would make her forget her agony. They would always find her standing by the window, crying silently. Finally, the day came for her to join her husband in Dubai. He came to pick her up. She was at home, and he found her not ready to leave. "What's wrong, dear?" he asked, astonished. "Why aren't you—" "Samir," she sobbed. "I can't leave. I just can't. I have to find him first." He tried to persuade her, but to no avail. He spoke to her parents to convince her, but nothing worked. Her mother begged her to forget the past and carry on with her life. Her in-laws also tried. Samir finally went to the parents of the missing boy. They came and talked to Duja, saying it was all God's will. It was no use suffering for what was meant to happen. Probably he was in a happy place somewhere, wherever he was. After a long time, Duja relented. With tears in her eyes, she hugged them all and agreed to leave with Samir. Of course, he would bring her back twice a year so she could continue her search in Jordan. Samir and Duja arrived at the airport, all packed and ready to depart. Their parents and other relatives came to bid them farewell. Duja's heart was heavy, but she had to go with her husband to start a new life in Dubai. She wished she could stay behind for some months at least. They were offloading their luggage from the car when suddenly Duja caught sight of a man just coming out of the airport. He had his luggage with him and was hurrying towards a taxi. She ran towards him. "Hey!" she shouted. "Hey, you! Stop!" The man turned around, surprised. He looked at her and waited. "You are the one!" she screamed. "Do you know where Hytham is?" "Are you talking to me?" asked the man incredulously. "Yes, you!" Duja shouted. Samir ran after her and caught her by the arm. "Come on," he said. "Let's go. We have to check in." Duja looked angrily at Samir. "Look," she cried. "This is the man, the ice cream man who took Hytham." "No, it can't be. You must be dreaming," Samir stressed. By now, the relatives came towards them, wondering what was going on. "It's him! He is the one!" Duja screamed. "Don't let him go!" Airport security arrived, but Duja continued shouting and screaming. Samir and their families were convinced that she was having a panic attack. She had seen someone who looked like the ice cream man and was becoming hysterical. "Please call the police," she pleaded. As the situation was becoming unmanageable, they had to call the police. Duja, Samir, and their parents all went to the police station. The stranger had to be taken as well. Samir looked upset. They would miss their flight, but Duja was not listening to reason. At the police station, the inspector asked Duja and the stranger a lot of questions. The stranger, who was flying in from Egypt, insisted he had never been to Jordan before. This was his first time. They checked his passport. His name was Mursil, and he had a new passport. The police detained him for one more day, pending further investigations. They had to check his identity in Egypt and confirm if he had an older passport. The next day, news came in that he had been in Jordan before and that he had had a sponsor. The sponsor was contacted, and he confirmed Mursil's identity. He also told the police that Mursil had suddenly left the country without informing him. Duja and Samir had to return home because of the new developments.
They had to wait till the matter was resolved and the criminal properly identified.
Mursil was grilled at the police station. After an hour or so of intense questioning, he confessed to his crime. He was the man who had abducted the boy and sold him to Idris. The police then took him in their vehicle to show them the house of Idris. They rang the bell. A lady opened the gate, and behind her was a boy who appeared to be about 15 years of age. She wondered what was happening and why the police were at her house. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the inspector said. "Where is Mr. Idris?" He died some years ago." She looked ruffled and a bit scared. What's the problem? Who is this boy?" "My son, Musab. Do you have any other children?" "No. Please tell me what's going on." The inspector looked grim. "We will explain everything at the police station," he replied. "Please come with us and don't make any fuss." The lady and the boy were bundled into the police vehicle and taken to the station. As soon as they arrived, Duja and Samir were asked to appear at the station along with the parents of the boy. They all came, anticipating good news. As they waited in one of the offices, Musab was brought in. When the father saw him, he ran to hug him. "My son, Hytham." Duja and his mother recognized him as well, but the boy had no idea what was going on. There were tears of joy and tears of sadness. Duja and the boy's parents could not believe what was happening. They laughed and hugged one another with happiness. As for Mrs. Idris, she felt pain and sorrow. She was going to lose the child to his real parents. Weeping and holding Musab's hands, she bid him farewell. He smiled, but also looked a bit sad. His parents stayed close to him, not wanting to lose him again. Mrs. Idris revealed the whole truth to the police. Her husband had given her the baby boy many years ago to love and care for as their own. He had told her not to ask any questions about him. Later, he had registered him as their biological son. He had bribed some officials to get that done. Musab was handed over to his parents after all the paperwork was completed. They had to go for DNA testing as soon as possible to establish their biological relationship. As for Duja, her hopes and prayers were answered. She had spent over 10 years fiercely determined to find her young cousin. Her faith and conviction resulted in the miracle that took place at the airport that day. She was leaving the country, and the object of her long search, the ice cream man, was just coming back from his country. Truly amazing.